Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar ki
Jai.
Sarvam Yogi Ramsuratkumar Ashram நமக்கு பகவான் இங்கிலீஷ் that has made it possible for us to spend 1 hour in the evening twilight singing His glorious name, supported by the strong spiritual current in the air, created by the puja of all the devatas. We have to remember this month is very special, very auspicious for puja, worship, japa, dhyana, and even the little tapas that we do will bear enormous fruit. Yesterday, I was describing the Leela of Bhagwan. Whatever I spoke yesterday was the glory of Yogi Ramsuratkumar. How he could make an ordinary person like me reach out to him, and how he gave that most beautiful experience, a taste of the ultimate state. One has to become established in that. It's only a glimpse, a taste, so that the mind would go after it and not after anything else. That Yogi Ramsuratkumar had come to mean that experience. We saw in that Leela how every time when we tried to reach out to him, only a locked door greeted us. That could surely be considered as inauspicious. And then again, we would run to the temple, but in vain. Again, inauspicious. Not once or twice, 5 times he did that to us. But then how it helped sharpen my longing for him. Isn't that a blessing? Though it looked negative, it was a great, great blessing because it was preparing me for his presence. There is a certain way to be receptive in the presence of these great souls. And the preparation was going on, and the preparation is as much a blessing as the final fruition, the final fulfillment. the way is as much a joy as the end. So, and again, how he derided me. And the very first time when I entered Ramana Ashram, it was so dark. That could have been considered as inauspicious. That could have been considered as a negative activity, perhaps an omen of what was to come. But what happened was the reverse. I saw the glorious, compassionate eyes of Ramana coming alive, as though I was sitting before him and was right under the penetrating, compassionate gaze of Ramana. So even the darkness that happened proved to be a great blessing that drove me to the cry of the soul, the naked soul. It stripped my soul of all pretensions, all assumptions. I stood there as a naked soul, crying out so pathetically for the divine. Now, why I am saying this, whatever life brings to us, by way of our fate, by way of our past karma, by way of our nature, has been designed by God, specially and specifically for us. Each one's life is different and specially and specifically designed by God for that soul, the individual soul, to reach out to the universal soul. So whatever life brings to us, be it a joy or sorrow, each one of them is a definite blessing. During the dark night of the soul, when the soul tries every possible way to reach out to the great beyond and fails miserably, it is a certain death. It is the pain of death. But even this would lead to the final step and therefore a definite blessing. So the message is loud and clear. Whatever life brings to us is what God is giving us to give us a push towards God. So everything is progress, everything is a blessing, and there are no mistakes. No mistakes at all. Even the mistake would prove to be a blessing later on when we consider the end, the destination. This is what our Bhagwan taught us. Whatever happens, happens because it's necessary for our spiritual growth. Whatever happens is grace. It happens only by the will of God, and God is perfect. So His Leela is perfect. And whatever comes from God can only be a blessing. But then the soul has to cry out, dissolving every other desire. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says that when you cry out for God, it's only when you cry your heart out, you would attain God. We remember how he rolled the slush, the quagmire, by the side of the Ganges, for all the people to see. The crowd derided him, mocked at him, saying he was mad. Why would this pujari roll like this, wallow in the quagmire, crying out, Ma, Ma, Ma? How he was panting for breath, the breath of truth. How his life was suffocated because he could not reach out to God. That he went to the extent of taking out the sickle from the hand of Mother Kali to finish his life. Ma, if I can't have your darshan, I would rather die. What is the point in living? And it's only when he made the final step of sacrifice that she appeared. Ramakrishna Paramasa says that people cry buckets of tears for the sake of their near and dear ones. Who is there to cry for God? It is the tears of the soul, the longing soul, that would invoke the grace, invite the divine to merge the soul with its universal being. We see in all the bhajans of Mirabai, these pathos reflect how much she cries. In the beginning of her life, we see how everyone else was controlling her. She was put in a position where Ranaji and his relatives, every relative, people who surrounded him, tortured her, controlled her. There was no freedom for her to function. But at one point, she just walked out. It happened. She didn't plan it or anything, it just happened. And she walked out in the freedom of love for her divine lover. There is a very beautiful Leela of Bhagwan. I should say the experience of a devotee with Bhagwan. Everybody knows Shri Perumal Raju Ayya of Krishnagiri. Once he and his wife Mahalakshmi went for darshan of Bhagwan. At the time, Srimati Mahalakshmi spoke to Bhagwan very longingly. She said, Swamiji, there are many songs of Meera, very haunting. They haunt my soul. I know there is so much in that. So much of her feeling in the songs, and she conveys something very, very high through them. Unfortunately, it's all in Hindi. I'm unable to understand. She was expressing the misery of not being able to understand the bhavas of a great soul as expressed in her songs. Bhagwan smiled and said, Mahalakshmi, if you want to know the meaning of those Hindi songs of Meera, bring them on to this beggar. This beggar would try to translate it for you. This beggar would translate it for you. This beggar would translate it for you. So he offered to do the translation. I believe in those days it was very difficult even to get a tape recorder, even to record Kivajas chant, KBJ, Jagannathan songs. They found it very difficult to procure a tape recorder, a good one. But Srimati Mahalakshmi managed to get one, and she also recorded in a cassette the songs of Meera. So next time, very eagerly, Shri Perumal Rajvaya and Mahalakshmi, they came to Bhagwan, and Bhagwan was very happy to see them and to see those songs of Meera. And then she played the very first song. Bhagwan heard it and then translated. The first line says, Hey Krishna, this prema, the prema of mine for you, how did it grow? Do you think that I watered this plant of prema? That I took water and poured for the growth of this prema? I poured my tears, and the plant of prema, the plant of love, longing, grew only with my tears. It was no water that I poured for the plant's growth, the plant of prema, love. I watered it with my tears. As soon, when Bhagwan was translating this, when he came to the word tears, I watered this prema with my tears. As soon as he started translating, Mahalakshmi and Ma closed her eyes in order to be very attentive to what he said. So when Bhagwan came to the word tears, it trailed off, and there was no sound, no word afterwards. So she opened her eyes and saw. Tears were streaming down the cheeks of Bhagwan. And Bhagwan was choking. He was unable to proceed. He was at once Meera and the experience, the bhava, and Sri Krishna. When Meera sang these lines, Krishna, you think I poured water for the growth of this tree, this plant of prema? How much Krishna would have cried. Krishna's heart would have melted. And how much Meera would have cried. So Bhagwan at once became Meera, Krishna, and the experience. He could no more proceed. There was a heavy silence there, a silence filled with the power of the divine love, the love of a longing individual soul for the universal soul, the love of Meera for Krishna, the tears of Meera and the tears of Krishna. And he could no more proceed. Then followed many hours of utter silence, a vibrant silence, a love-filled silence. In our longing for God, in the tears of our longing for God, there is a joy. It is at once a joy and misery. It is joy and sorrow. How could sorrow turn into joy? How could joy turn into sorrow? That is the wonder of the divine love. The prema bhakti, they blend. The joy and sorrow blend. It's a beautiful blend. So there could only be this vibrant, love-filled, sweet silence. And they all merged into the divine love, the prema bhakti of Bhagwan. What a beautiful scene it must have been. It is reliving Meera's moments of tears, love, and the bliss of it. What more can we say? So, a householder, we know that Bhagwan had often said, the body that is given to us and the life that follows this is meant only for God. Only for God remembrance. So everybody's body is designed, everybody's life is designed specifically for this purpose. Hadn't Bhagwan said so many times, it's only when you remember God you truly live. When you forget God, you are dead. What a strong word to describe it. And in the beginning of life, we know only the body, we know only our feelings, and all the people around, father, mother, brother, sister, they're all related to the body. A sister is sister because she's related to the body. A brother is related to the body. We do not love somebody next door. We do not call them sisters, brothers. those who came out of the same womb, where this body was. So in the beginning, everything is related to the body, and it's a bodily life. But then something happens to a brother or a sister or father or mother or any dear relative. We cry, we suffer with them, we pray. We pray so much, we cry so much for them. It is very natural, and it is training again, so that one day we will cry for God. So this crying, this feeling for the misery, for the relatives, is as important as you are crying for God, because this is training. Just as every time I went there, I found a locked door which sharpened my longing, and so a preparation for his darshan. The tears that we shed for the relatives, for ourselves, for the relatives, they are the preparation for our tears later on for God. So everything is natural, everything is necessary, everything is progress. As I used to say, when you climb up a mountain towards a peak, the very structure of the mountain is such that there are upslopes and downslopes. Upslope, we are able to feel that we are climbing up. But the downslope is also on the way to the peak. So every downslope is also progress, it's not a setback. We are not digressing, we are progressing. If you hold the peak in view all the time, then you would know your up climb and the down climb are also towards a peak, towards a goal of life, towards God. So everything that happens in our life is well designed, meticulously designed by God for our progress towards God. And so everything is only a blessing. This is what we have to remember, so that one day our tears for the relatives, our tears for ourselves will become tears for God, and there you would not know the difference between the joy and sorrow. They would become a beautiful divine blend. The Upanishads say that a husband loves the wife not because she is the wife, it's because of the self, because she is the self. The wife loves the husband naturally, not because he is the husband, but because he is the self. The love for each other that we feel is all because of our love for the self. It is our love for God that expresses itself as our love for our relatives. The ananda, the happiness, we think that buying a new car is happiness, buying a new set of dresses, happiness. We find many happinesses in this life's journey, little happiness, which sometimes prove to be a burden later on. But the moment we long for something and then somebody longs for a job, Somebody longs for money, somebody longs for honor. And as soon as we get it, we rejoice in it. And this temporary, momentary happiness comes from the Satchit Ananda. Because we are all embodiments of Ananda by nature. That is our true self. And every Ananda that we feel in this life, when you go after some worldly things also, comes from there. This happiness, this momentary happiness of Maya, is a reflection of the original bliss of the self. The tears that you shed when something negative happens, either for the sake of the relatives or for the sake of your own self, they will become the tears for God later on. Everything that our life offers is a preparation for our final fulfillment. If we remember this, we will know that we are progressing all the time. I remember when I read the diary of Agaram Jayaraman, I believe as soon as Agaram Jayaraman entered one day, one night, in Sannadhi Street house, Bhagwan asked him, all of a sudden, the first thing that he asked him, Jayarama, how is India? And Jayaram, pat came the reply from Jayaraman, Swamiji, India is progressing. And then Bhagwan literally danced in joy. Oh Jayarama, you said the right thing, Jayarama. You made this beggar happy by your reply. India is progressing, Jayarama. Everyone is progressing. Everything is progress, Jayarama. And then he danced the dance of joy, Ananda Tandava. So this is what we learned from Bhagwan. Of course, one has to wait for the tears for the worldly, the tears for the relatives to turn into tears for God, like Meera. There is a quote of Kabir. Kabir was very dear to Bhagwan, and naturally so, because Shri Gyananandagiri declared in front of an assemblage that Yogi Ramsuratkumar was none other than Kabir returned. Now, Kabir's doha, a couplet, is this: Dheere dheere re mana, dheere sab kuch hoy. Mali sinjit sau gathe, ridu aaye pal hoy. Dheere dheere re mana, dheere sab kuch hoy. Mali sinji sau gathe, ridu aave pal hoy. Dheere dheere means very slowly. Oh mind, everything will happen only slowly. Slowly, slowly, everything will happen. Oh mind, the gardener may pour 100 pots of water to a plant, to a tree, but it's only when the season comes, when the time comes, the tree will bear fruit. It does not hurry to bear fruit. Just because the gardener is pouring 100 pots of water, the tree will bear fruit only when the time comes, when the season comes. Dhire dhire, re mana, dhire sab kuch hoy. So for everything to happen, there is a time. The process takes time to blossom to its final fulfillment. And we have to wait patiently. So when we chant the name, sometimes we chant and pray, and nothing seems to happen for quite some time, and then we feel terrible about it. But remember, it takes time, but it will definitely happen. At some nama or the other, what we want, what we seek for, will definitely happen. We have to go on patiently. Bhagavan would save us even in the last minute. Do not lose hope. There is another couplet which Bhagavan used to quote often. Bade chalo jawan, rukna tera kaam nahi, chalna teri shaan. O brave soldier, march on, march on. O soldier, do not stop. Stopping is not your work. Chalna teri shaan. Keep on walking, keep on marching on, and that is your glory. Bhagavan often used to say this couplet. So let us all march on with the nama chanting, without losing hope, without getting tired, all the time knowing, all the time with the wisdom that it's going to happen at one nama. Sooner or later, when God chooses to do it, it's not for us to lose hope. We shall submit our today's prayers at the feet of Bhagavan, knowing that Bhagavan will do it when He chooses. And we have to keep trying and trying and trying, because that's what Bhagavan said. When Papa Ramdas asked him to chant the name all the 24 hours. When Bhagavan described this to me, he said, Devaki, not that this beggar could do it all the 24 hours, like Ramdas asked, but this beggar was trying and trying and trying. Devaki, this trying is tapas. So we shall remember, and we'll keep on trying. Bhagavan, there is nothing that you cannot do, there is nothing that you do not know. But we seek, we beseech you again and again for your immediate divine intervention to free the entire world from the clutches of this dreadful virus and its variant, and bring back normalcy to the world. Bhagavan, please uproot this panic from the hearts of people